I am concerned at where we are, and it's so different as you study history that before the Supreme Court was in touch with the people, they made terrible rulings like Dred Scott and other things. These rulings were horrible. Jim Crow said, but that's where the country sort of was. That's not true now, I think. Most people in the United States want to see democracy work, do not want to see discrimination. Just look how quickly attitudes changed in the last decade toward people who are gay or lesbian and those sort of rights that have come about. And young people in particular are really, I think, don't want to be discriminating against other people.
Nobody actually want to be discriminated against, looking
So,
at the negative effect it has on the people. And I want to really stick on a little bit to what you were saying, or referring to Lincoln, that all men are created equal. I think that one will, to some people, they will mean, like George Orwell will say in his book, The Animal Farm, all animals are equal, but some are more equal than the other. That is how it appeared to most that is the law in the United States. Could you make a clarification on that, if that is how you see it too, that all people are equal in the United States, but some are more equal than the other, which is against what Lincoln was saying?
yeah, well, I think the laws are and how they're interpreted, and that's where the problem has been. You cannot make people not like other people. I don't understand it. I've never met anybody I didn't like. There are people who don't like me, and I can understand that, but I don't. But prejudice, in this day and age, people should understand. Let's take the issue as I try to explain in the new book, Justice Deferred. There's no such thing as race. You know, whether you take it as a person of faith like myself, that all people are created in God's image, or if you look at science, there's no such thing as race. We're all the same. But in the United States and other places, and particularly the Supreme Court was part of this, they took that concept, a social construct, not a reality, and made something called race and treated different people according to the Constitution and the laws differently based on that concept of race. And up until one of the arguments in our book is that we have had 12 generations, if you think of a generation as 25 years, of the courts and the law teaching white supremacy, teaching and actually requiring white people to discriminate against Black people and thinking that's the normal. And only like 2 generations, really since the 1950s, a little bit of starting in the 1930s maybe, but really from the 1950s till about the 1970s or 80s did the courts begin to, and the laws start ruling that people had to be treated the same. But I still hope that history is a powerful tool. It was one that Lincoln came to understand and learn, that history with evidence, despite all the notions of alternative facts, there is such a thing as evidence. I loved when John Adams, the second president, said, there are facts, you have to deal with them. And if we understand the evidence, then we can do something to move forward. But I'm worried about the courts today. In the United States, we don't have a parliamentarian form of government. It's a winner take all for the presidency. They appoint federal judges and the Supreme Court for a lifetime appointment. And the last few years in particular, with just how extraordinarily partisanship has played into this, and the use of race, using race and old tactics that were used in the 1890s to sort of motivate people to vote against their own economic interest by using basically what would have been thought of as racist, or at least appeals of racism, have come way too common in the United States. And one political party has sort of embraced using this technique, very similar to the 1890s. I'm doing a court case at this time as an expert witness in Georgia against a law called SB 202. And I was asked to investigate the difference between now and 1982, when they renewed the Voting Rights Act for 25 years, because Judge Alito ruled and said, today is not like 1982. And he's right. Unfortunately, in some ways it is worse. Everybody in 1982 thought people had the right to vote. But now we are having the Supreme Court rule in favor of laws that keep people from voting, or trying to. It's like going back to 1898 in the famous court case that set all this off, Williams versus Mississippi, which basically said if you can use neutral language and not say we're trying to keep people who are Latinx or African American from voting, but we are going to require people to have an in-person voter ID, when the majority of the people who do not have them are Black people or don't have driver's license, things like that. So this is one of my great concerns, and people know this, but they find ways to do it. And one of the big changes that's happened in America is when I did for the NAACP-LDF, the in-person voter ID in Texas. I can give you a great example of that. The Supreme Court had the federal courts had just said that this Texas voter ID law was discriminatory and denied it. But then Judge Roberts ruled in Shelby County versus Holder that Section 5, which is where the Justice Department comes in, has to approve these laws, was no longer constitutional, and Texas, within almost minutes, reinstated the law. Well, I was an expert, and I had been there in 2003 or 4 when there was a midterm redistricting by Congressman DeLay of Texas, where he thought he could get 2 more Republican seats. And the reason he thought he could do it is because there had been a huge increase in population in Texas, which most of it had been Hispanic or Latinx. And when I was there, the judge said to me, while I was on the stand, Professor Burton, how can we have democracy when young people don't vote? How can we get young people to vote? The next time I'm on the stand testifying in Texas, I said to the judges, now the last time I was here, I was asked, why can't we get people to vote? And yet I am here now, and the state of Texas trying to stop people from voting. And then I told them why. One of the things that's happened is Texas has become a minority population, that white people are a minority in that state, and the United States is moving that way. That's a huge change. And of course, you have a recession, and every time you have bad economic times, it has never been good for race relations, unfortunately. And then thirdly, when President Obama ran for president, and I was surprised that he won, but it was the first time that particularly African Americans and other minorities saw a candidate that they could identify with. So they registered at a higher rate than ever before and voted at a higher rate. And I think that really, really scared a lot of white people, and particularly the Republican Party. Unfortunately, the great party of Lincoln is the party that has used that fear to get people to support their candidates, and it really took off in 2016 in an extraordinarily bad way, I think. And I just hope that we can do something about it, because the courts, because of those election processes, and that a president appoints a Supreme Court justice, federal justice for life, then when President Donald Trump won in 2016, he appointed 3 justices, 3 for lifetime, all, at least they seem to be, and I have some hope that maybe they will change as they look at the evidence and the law, very ruling against that very laws that are supposed to guarantee equality, like the Voting Rights Act.